This is the Wellness Movement, and I am desperately looking for my intro.
Just say it from the
So
heart.
you're watching Channel 251. Download the BarnBurner and the H.E.R Network app. It's free in the App Store. I think I did finally memorize this. It's free in the App Store. Be sure to leave a review, and you can watch BarnBurner and H.E.R Network on channel 251, also on Roku and Roku sticks, Fire and Fire sticks, something like that. Okay, I broke a sweat. I broke an actual sweat.
You did great.
Anyway, here we are.
Hello.
So yeah.
Welcome to another Wednesday.
Yes, to another Wednesday. And you sent me this morning a very interesting piece of thing that was on the information that was on the, oh, here's what I missed. You can watch us, BarnBurner and Zingo TV on, you can get the app on any app store. So the BarnBurner and the Zingo TV apps. Okay.
You got that.
Anyway, you sent me something this morning that was really interesting because I've only been talking about this since March last year.
And as soon as I saw the piece, which was titled, "Scientists have now discovered that gut health could play a role in the severity of COVID-19 cases." As soon as I read it, I was like, because Julie's only been talking about this since day one. And then when I sent it to you, that's exactly what you said. Well, I loved it. I'm like, finally they connect that your health and wellness is connected to you being sick.
I know, it's crazy how that works because actually, and I'm not making it up that I've been writing about this since March, because if you go to my website and you go to my blogs, you're going to find blogs dated all the way back to March 2020 that talk about the importance of gut health, how to boost your immune system, all of that fun stuff.
Well, remember when we were part of a certain organization and we would have those weekly meetings and you would always bring it up and you would basically get dismissed because I understand at the time it was new and people were scared. And so people turned to things that are comfortable and that they know. So, pizza, alcohol, people were talking about how they'd sat on the couch all day and had Chinese food and drank alcohol. And you were just like, well, you should kind of maybe think about your health right now. And people were like, And here we are almost a year later in extreme measures now, as per the provincial government have worded it, that we're in trouble. And they're only just being like, wait a second, maybe not eat the pizza and eat the apple.
I know. And I'm the freaking radical.
Exactly.
I'm the crazy one.
Stop talking, Julie. I know. That's why I sent it. It was hysterical.
Trying to make people healthy. We just want to be sick.
Yes. Well, if only kale tasted like pizza.
You know what? Kale chips are pretty yummy.
I don't disagree with that, unless you burn them, which I've done multiple times, because they're very finicky. You're like, they look, and then they just turn to ash.
They're like avocados. Yeah. Oh, look, I'm looking forward to that avocado. And it's like, if you wait an hour too long, that's it. It's brown.
That's kale chips.
So
they just disintegrate.
With kale chips, all you have to do is, it doesn't require a lot of time. You kind of have to keep an eye on them.
Yes, that's the thing is you're like, okay, I'll just put them in for a few minutes and check on them. And they're like, sizzle, sizzle, I'm looking great. And you're like, perfect. And then they go and evaporate. And you're like, what happened? There is no in between.
You know what's really good? And maybe I'll make these later. Sweet potato chips. Like you slice them super thin. Just a little bit of.
You made a really good appetizer once, back when we were allowed to see each other.
Yeah.
It was like sweet potato, I think tomato on top, and then yeah, I was like, what is this? It was heavenly.
Yeah, it was really good. It's
Mm-hmm.
tomatoes and onions, but you, if I remember correctly, it's balsamic, and you do a reduction,
Mm-hmm.
and you bake the sweet potatoes, and then you top them. I
They
love
were
how we've just gone to food.
Well, it's almost time for second breakfast. So, yeah, let's talk about food. And then I'm going to go eat.
So actually, just to give people practical advice, your gut health is always important. It's
Mm-hmm.
never not important, despite what we all thought as teenagers. Like you're looking at someone, like I remember I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I would take the bus home from my school, and I would always stop at the mall downtown. Like where I lived and where I went to school were completely different ends of town. And so I always had to change buses downtown, and I would use that as the perfect excuse to go to Burger King.
Of course.
It's like,
makes sense.
It's here, I gotta eat. And so I would go to Burger King, and then I would go home. That's not a health strategy. Like, yeah.
I feel like that's a staple of every teenage life.
Oh yeah. And we used to do like all you can eat pizza and all that kind of stuff. But none of that stuff is actually good for gut health. So, Burger King. What?
Just to, I guess we'll just elaborate a little on the article, because it's basically, they're saying scientists have just connected the dots that the most severe cases of COVID, the people pre-COVID had come up with, or had issues with their gut. So leaky gut was mentioned quite a few times in the article. And so this is only something I had heard about probably from you, but in about the past year or so, is leaky gut. And so let's talk, and I say let's, you talk about that, and I'll just go, yes, because I don't think enough people know about leaky gut, and that it's very, very common. And that in itself is a big issue why people are likely to get more sick and potentially could get a more severe case of COVID.
Mm-hmm. So I think the other thing to always keep in mind is that when it comes to gut health, your immune system, like 70% of it lives in your gut. So anytime your gut health is compromised, it's automatically going to compromise your immune system. And I think I quoted this months ago, but Dr. Mark Hyman said that 88% of Americans, and we can pretty much parlay that into Canada as well. Canadians aren't that much healthier than Americans. We have the same poor diet habits as Americans do. But 88% of Americans have compromised immunity, and that's all related to gut health. In terms of leaky gut, like almost, what year are we in? We're in 2021. So 2 years ago, I started researching gut health and autoimmune conditions. And what I discovered was this wonderful compound known as glyphosate. Now, first I couldn't pronounce it, so I kind of wanted to dismiss it, but I figured out how to pronounce it. But the science, basically glyphosate, it's a water soluble toxin, and it's rampant in the food system and the water supply and the air that we breathe, because we live on a water planet. And what glyphosate does in the human body, there's no way, if you are a living creature on this planet, that you have not been impacted by glyphosate. You have. You're probably dealing with all kinds of chronic conditions and probably, unless the person you're going to for health advice has done the research I've done, they probably don't know about it either. I didn't know about it. I went digging for it. I was like really doing some extra research that's outside of anything I learned in school. And when I discovered it, I was like, oh, wow, this makes so much sense. But so what glyphosate does in soil is it destroys the microbiome of the soil. Soil has a microbiome. And what it does in plants is it disrupts basically it disrupts plants in such a way that they don't have a complete amino acid profile, which is what we need to create the building blocks. Like amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and it's not the protein your body needs, it's the amino acids it needs. So, and that's what it uses to create hormones and enzymes and muscle tissue and all that fun stuff. What it does in the human body is it destroys the microbes in the gut. And while it's at it, the junctions of our gut they're literally called tight junctions, but what glyphosate does is it starts to tear them apart just a little. And then the contents that are supposed to be staying in your gut and expelled out of your body start leaking into other parts of your body, AKA leaky gut. There is a way to fix it. And I mean, that's kind of what has led me down the path that I'm on currently, because I was like, okay, well, this is happening. How do we fix it? And there is a way to fix it. And it's not about like what you're eating, although it is. You don't get to eat pizza and beer yet. Like, you have to be sensitive that the microbes in your gut thrive on plant foods. So if you're eating a lot of processed foods or sugar or alcohol or tons and tons of meat, you're not doing your gut health any justice. But you do also have to repair the leaks, and that is possible. So anyway, yeah.
That is possible. How? You've left us hanging.
Oh, well, like you take no, you take Biomedic, and that's why I tell people, like, you don't need probiotics, you just need Biomedic, because that's going to seal up those tight junctions again, and it's going to get the glyphosate out of your body, because you don't want it hanging out,
So essentially, no matter what we do, we're going to consume glyphosate. Yes. So having a product such as the Biomedic to flush it out of our system faster before it can like attach and do damage. That's where our goal is.
Yeah, because, and it's not just getting rid of the glyphosate, it's also getting rid of other toxins and heavy metals. Like, this has been tested. Like, you can do a test and measure the glyphosate levels in your body, and then you would take Biomedic for a set period of time, and then you can test your glyphosate levels again. And what they discovered was that it's not just the glyphosate levels that drop. If there were other toxins in your body, our body emits a response to toxins, and it's an inflammatory response that can be measured, called C-reactive protein. So they can measure C-reactive protein. So in a preclinical trial, they had two groups of people still on the standard American diet, which we know is called SAD for a reason. And they didn't change their diet. They just gave one group Biomedic and one group nothing. And the group that got Biomedic, they saw their glyphosate levels after 6 weeks drop by 74%, and their C-reactive protein by 75%. And I have heard that other people who've stayed on Biomedic, their levels have dropped by as much as 95%. So.
And does it make a difference doing organic versus non-organic in terms of the glyphosate content? Because I know glyphosate is in everything now, right? Like, unfortunately, even if you're going with more organic produce, they still can't really escape
it as much. So you would really need to know where. Okay, first of all, organic is always better than conventional for a whole bunch of reasons, because it's not just glyphosate we have to worry about. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of chemicals. And right now we are doing a very large experiment with the human population, because testing chemicals in isolation is one thing, but there's been no test that's been done. Like, what happens when you have all these chemicals in different foods being ingested by one person, like continual doses over years and decades? There's no scientific study. But we do know that all of these different chemicals, they're either endocrine disruptors, or they're neurotoxins potentially, or they're cancer causing. Like glyphosate isn't just linked to leaky gut, but it's also linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Right.
And it's so funny we're talking about this, because I was like, oh, what do I want to talk about? Well, maybe I want to talk about glyphosate. I haven't talked about that for a while. And the company that unleashed glyphosate into the market, Monsanto, they've had maybe like 3 or 4 very big lawsuits settled against them. Like we're talking like tens of millions of dollars. And it was either farmers who sued them because they were using Roundup on their crops and they didn't know the links to cancer, or it was like a gardener who was maybe spraying public golf courses and didn't realize that Roundup had glyphosate and how toxic it was. But here's the interesting thing. 2 years ago, Monsanto got bought out by Bayer for what one would consider a very low price, considering what Monsanto is supposedly worth. But in the United States, you cannot sue a pharmaceutical company. So all those people who got settlements will never see a dime. But wow, we do know that this is linked to cancer, and there are some people who downplay that. So outside of leaky gut, and that's why there's actually a doctor that I follow in the States, Dr. Zach Bush, who's like, he was kind of the first person that I stumbled across, but there's a couple others that are doing the research as well on glyphosate and its links to various illnesses. But basically his team has accumulated a pile of data that shows that as the use of glyphosate increased, certain health conditions also increased. So unfortunately, most people don't know about glyphosate. They don't know about gut health. I spend every day talking about this stuff, right? And I wish more people would take an interest, because it is possible to actually not have it in your body, first of all, because even if you ingest it, as long as you're getting rid of it on a daily basis, it's going to do minimal damage. But, most people spend more time worrying about what's on Netflix than they do about their own personal health. And, my opinion is we can do very little of what is going on right now in the outside world. But the one thing we have agency over is our own personal health.
Mm-hmm. So other than taking Biomedic or something similar, is there any other way to rid yourself from glyphosate or to heal leaky gut?
No.
So it's not like if you just start eating raw vegetables, it's going to help.
No.
There's nothing. Okay.
Because what Biomedic does is it has 4 herbs in it, and one of the herbs actually goes into the cell and removes the glyphosate. So, and it's just and then one of the other herbs actually repairs the leaky gut. And there was one other company I came across that removes the glyphosate but doesn't repair the gut. So doing one without the other makes no logical sense, which is why I like Biomedic, because it does like basically 3 in 1. Repairs the gut, removes the heavy metals and the chemical toxins, and functions as a pre and probiotic.
So here's a good question. Can people still eat crappy food if they take the Biomedic?
I would recommend not, because you still have to feed the microbes in your gut. And you may like pizza, they don't.
Right.
You might love alcohol, they don't. So, I would highly recommend getting in the habit of trying to have at least 30 different plant varieties in your diet every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't even think I know 30 different types of vegetables.
It's not just vegetables, but it can also be fruits. So for example, this morning I had a smoothie, and And when bananas are a little bit on the greener side, they are actually a really great prebiotic. They feed the microbes in your gut, the microbes that specifically thrive on that particular type of fiber. So there are so many nutrients within plant foods and how they feed the gut. Like, we don't actually even have all of the research. We have most of it, not all of it. There is a international project called the Gut Health Project, and it actually looked at different populations and how many plant foods they have. And basically the populations that have the most plant foods in their diet have the least amount of chronic illness.
I can see that.
Yeah. So yeah, lots and lots of plants.
Well, I was just glad this morning when I woke up and finally saw something interesting in the headlines, more to do with, taking care of your health. Both of us are in the health and wellness business. And so it's nice that they're starting to put the connection together for people, because we are fighting a bit of an uphill battle. And so it's good that finally, it's not just you and I saying it, it's scientists now saying, listen, we're actually making some notable research here that we're connecting the two.
Yeah, and I think, like, just to circle back on plant foods, like, that's fruits, that's vegetables, it's whole grains, it's brown rice, like cool brown rice. Like, if you cook brown rice and then cool it and feed that to your that's actually really, really healthy for your gut. Different lentils, different beans. So, like, there's a lot of variety of plants out there, and basically the more, like, make it a little challenge for yourself. Try and vary up instead of having the same 5 foods throughout the week. Like, play with it and have different greens, different fruit, different vegetables, different, like, lentils and beans and all of this stuff. Like, make it an adventure for yourself, right? And the more you can do that, like, make a challenge, like, just count, like, how many different types of foods you have, plant foods. And if you're only having like 10, you need to get up to 30 somehow. You got to get to 30. That's your goal.
So we have obviously good and bad bacteria in our stomach. How do we get more good? Just by eating better?
Eating better.
It will, like, respawn itself or multiply? Not.
But, and by also eliminating things like processed foods and sugar and processed meats and red meat, like, all of those things are not good for gut health. So those are and the more plants you have, the more your gut microbiome is going to recover. And the stronger your gut is, the stronger your immune system. Like, I don't know, I've somehow come through this whole thing a year later, not a cold. Go figure.
Nice. Well, lots of good information.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're almost at the end.
I think we're getting close. Countdown is on.
Okay. All right. So now I do have the outro. This show can be heard on the BarnBurner Radio Network on all of its 122 platforms. Her network is part of BarnBurner Media. Please check out barnburner.ca for all the news and programming. BarnBurner, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it.
Nice.